I'm Christian Sharon. I'm Associate Professor of Worship and Director of the Chapel. And together with my colleague, Keisha Dyson, who's Vice President for Enterprise Innovation, I'll be helping to co-host this event today. And we're beginning with a hymn. If you can find the blue All Creation Sings, it's number 1094. And we sing better when we stand, so as you are able, I invite you to stand.
Good afternoon, everyone. As we gather to celebrate and honor President James Nieman and the years of dedicated service that he's had to the Lutheran School of Theology at Chicago, it is my pleasure to bring forth Greg Lewis, the chair of the Board of Directors. He will be delivering opening remarks. This afternoon, Greg will set the tone for this special occasion as we reflect on Jim's impactful leadership and his unwavering commitment to LSTC. Join me in welcoming Greg Lewis.
Thank you, Keisha. Good afternoon, Christian friends, and welcome to a joyous and celebratory gathering in honor of our colleague, companion, and brother in the very honorable calling of Lutheran higher education. It is indeed my privilege to offer a few brief remarks in recognition of the many achievements President Nieman has established along his pathway as the highest office holder of the Lutheran School of Theology at Chicago. By way of context, let us consider the guidance offered by some early verses of Psalm 74. Give ear, O my people, to my teaching. Incline your ears to the words of my mouth. I will utter dark sayings from of old, things that we have heard and known, that our fathers have told us. We will not hide them from our children, but tell to the coming generations the glorious deeds of the Lord and his might and the wonders he has done. The psalmist has announced some powerful injunctions. Listen to my teaching. Pay attention to my words. What is old shall be made new. Blithe adherence to Lutheran doctrine is inappropriate. Rather, it should be interpreted in the light of reason and robust academic review. All of these things apply to the ancients and apply with equal force in modernity. They are also standards that Dr. Nieman has observed and followed throughout his career at LSTC. In fact, it is by way of the disciplined and laborious application of such leadership that President Nieman has been able, with the assistance of our highly qualified faculty and staff, to pass on to the present population of students the glorious deeds of the Lord and the wonders he has done. This was leadership that over the course of 13 years has positioned LSTC to deliver a first-rate theological education to the coming generations. What proof do we have that the foregoing is true? Well, our accreditors have given us their highest endorsement. Therefore, President Nieman, we give thanks for your service and wish the Lord's blessings upon your future. Please stay tuned, a short video will follow.
This is heavy and light. Risk in ministry depends on this kind of theological claim. We can risk wisely, not because we are so darn smart or daring, but because we are secured by a promise that opens the way toward lasting life.
In nearly 13 years as president of the Lutheran School of Theology in Chicago, Jim Nieman has shaped the seminary's identity, guiding it through times of profound change, both within the church and the world. Jim's leadership is rooted in a deep sense of collaboration. He consistently emphasizes that leadership is not a solo act, but the result of partnerships with colleagues, faculty, students, and the church at large. Throughout his tenure, Jim championed several core values that define LSTC today. Under his leadership, LSTC has become an agile seminary, responding to the evolving needs of students, the church, and society. It has embraced being a public seminary, with its curriculum and outreach reflecting a commitment to justice and public theology. Jim has guided LSTC in becoming a moral seminary, ensuring that issues of intersectionality, racial justice, and LGBTQIA+ inclusion are not just part of the conversation, but central to its mission. This work is seen in the seminary's bold stance on reparations, racism, and its advocacy for marginalized communities. Jim has also played a pivotal role in making LSTC an adaptive seminary, Whether it was navigating financial challenges, leading the seminary through critical relocation, or supporting innovations in theological education, Jim's steady hand ensured LSDC remained relevant and resilient. Jim's tenure will be remembered not just for what he accomplished, but how he did it, with humility, grace, and a deep respect for those he worked alongside, always acknowledging the collective effort behind LSDC's achievements. As Jim transitions to this next stage of life, LSDC carries forward its legacy of innovation, justice, partnership, prepared for a future of values that he helped instill.
Sorry, I can't help but look at you. Today, we are gathered from near and far to pause and recognize a leader who, by vision and determination, has guided LSTC and positioned it for long-term success. When President James Nieman assumed his role in 2012, he faced a seminary that was grappling with financial strain, institutional uncertainty, and concerns from accreditors about its sustainability. Rather than shying away from these challenges, Jim developed and executed a strategic, decade-long plan focused on strengthening governance, securing financial stability, and enhancing the institution's identity. One of his key initiatives was to reshape the board of directors, creating a smaller, more diverse, and actively engaged group of capable and supporting LSTC directors that support this mission. Here to speak on the significant transformations in board governance, diversity, and leadership that have taken place under President Nieman's leadership is former board chair, or the COVID chair, as Jim refers to her, Christy Ferguson.
Before I get started, I wish we could sing 10 more hymns so I could listen to Jim's family sing. It's like, wow. Wow. So the theme I've been asked to address is how Jim's leadership has made us a more agile seminary. The best example of this is the work that grew out of a retreat with Beth Lewis of 1517, formerly known as Augsburg Fortress. At that time, we determined that our board of governance structure needed some work. So Jim asked Jane Marr and myself to work with him to draft a new governance structure. The objective was to make the board more nimble, read agile, by reducing our size from 30 to 15 and our committees to 3 main ones. We succeeded in making the board more able to respond efficiently and effectively to changes in theological education in general and at our seminary in particular. Lynette Brown-So, who was our Wise Stewards consultant, said she loved our board structure. I'm not sure Jim and I would bubble quite that much, but, but the changes have, in fact, made us more agile. Having fewer board members, improved function of our committees. A great deal of the work now takes place in these committees with collaboration with faculty, staff, and student liaisons. All of those changes have made us, in fact, a more agile seminary, more able to respond to changes as they arise. Thank you.
In the not-so-distant past, denominational seminaries functioned a bit like factories, producing pastors to run congregations, which each graduate being interchangeable parts, able to be fitted into most any congregation and function there running their programs and ministries. But in conjunction with faculty leaders, Jim helped envision and implement a public church curriculum rooted in the conviction that today's leaders must be formed for leadership in multiple intersecting publics to address the complex needs of today's world. Here to speak briefly to this element of Jim's impact, being a public seminary, please welcome Dr. Marvin Wickware, Associate Professor of Church and Society and Ethics.
This is a celebration of Jim Nieman's leadership, so I'm going to honor his communication style by presenting you with 3 main points. I'll share 3 gifts that Jim has brought to the development and realization of LSTC's public church curriculum. Please forgive any emulation of his speech pattern during these remarks. I'm aware that this is a celebration and not a roast. It's just that I heard his voice in my head as I was writing. 3 gifts, then: the steadfastness of Jim Nieman's commitment to LSTC's distinctive identity, the power of Jim Nieman's passion for shared governance, and the timeliness and clarity of Jim Nieman's leadership. First, the steadfastness of Jim Nieman's commitment to LSTC's distinctive identity. Largely at Jim's direction, we have stuck with a key question for years: what is distinctive about LSTC? This question has had a significant impact on our public church curriculum, so I'll take a very quick moment to share what I find distinctive about it. LSTC's public church curriculum weaves careful attention to context and the pursuit of equity and justice through strategic, effective leadership throughout students' biblical and theological learning. Jim has been steadfast in his commitment to this seminary's distinctive identity. Second, the power of Jim Nieman's passion for shared governance. Jim has regularly taken part in faculty conversations about our curriculum, while actively working to avoid having any undue influence by virtue of his prominent role in LSTC's governance structure. While rigorously avoiding imposing any kind of mandates on the faculty in our work of curricular design, Jim has stressed the importance of LSTC's strategic plan and its explicit commitment to anti-racism, and has repeatedly assured the faculty that the board and key donors were passionate about our distinctive work. We know that Jim is passionate about shared governance, but I want to stress that this passion has borne fruit at LSTC. Third, the timeliness and clarity of Jim Nieman's leadership. I distinctly recall one conversation in which the faculty reached an impasse. Some members of our faculty were worried that our curriculum, with its increasingly explicit commitment to equity and anti-racism, wasn't sufficiently Lutheran. Jim spoke into that moment with a powerful hope for theological education at LSTC, stating that if LSTC was going to live into the fullness of its role as a seminary of the ELCA, it would have to take on the task of forming leaders who recognize that there's no necessary tension between being Lutheran and being committed to justice and equity. At a pivotal moment in our In our work of curriculum revision, Jim cautioned our faculty against accepting a false, if popular, dichotomy, and encouraged us to embrace the work of thought leadership in our service to the ELCA. Leadership that is exercised with timeliness and clarity of purpose, passion for shared governance, and steadfastness and commitment to what makes this seminary a special place. These are important gifts that Jim has offered to this seminary and to the faculty's work of curriculum development. However, Jim would say, but wait, there's more. All three of these gifts gain their value from what I perceive to be at the heart of Jim's service at LSTC, his deep faith in Christ, and his determined faithfulness in carrying out the work to which the Spirit has called him, even in these final 83 days he's counting of his presidency.
It may seem odd to speak of a seminary being moral. Isn't that just obvious? Yet, what constitutes moral leadership in theological education changes with the times, and taking new stands requires risk for the sake of faithfulness. Many here know the moving story of LSTC choosing to do the right thing by returning a rare 9th century Greek copy of the New Testament, Codex 1424, as it was called, to its rightful owners, the Greek Orthodox Church. Closer to home, Jim has partnered with many others at LSTC on initiatives addressing some of the most important justice issues of our time, including committing to an ongoing diversity, equity, inclusion, and justice effort, including LGBTQIA affirmation, and this new initiative on reformations, of course on reformations, but on reparations. To speak about Jim's impact in being a moral seminary, I want to welcome Dr. Linda Thomas, who's Dean and Vice President of Academic Affairs, and as just affirmed by the board, the Bernard Fisher Westberg Distinguished Professor of Theology and Anthropology.
Good afternoon. Jim, I'm just so delighted to be here to talk about morality and your commitment to such. When the board meeting began this week, Jim talked about what he was going to bring, but said that because of Tuesday, he needed to pivot. What strong moral leadership for Jim, president of a seminary, to stand before his board and say, wait a minute, we need to talk about what just happened in our society. I can't think of what could be more of a public church moral stance that set in motion the way we as leaders should work together. Jim's commitment to justice and equity is so evident as we have gone through the years. When I looked at the young man, I said, he looks so young. But as he has aged, his moral wisdom has come to the full. So we give thanks for your leadership, Jim. I am so glad to have worked with you for the last 13 years, and I don't say goodbye very nicely. So thank you so much.
Under President Nieman's leadership, LSTC has really stepped up as a model of adaptability. We've had to. Jim knew that sustainable growth was critical, so along with our colleagues in advancement, he revitalized the seminary's development team and their efforts to focus on fresh and new plan giving opportunities. One of his boldest decisions was relocating us here. And among his most visionary choices was Project Starling, which aims to expand access to theological education and move LSTC beyond a position of sustaining to thriving. Here to talk about Jim in this role is former Foundation Board Chair and LSTC Board Member Larry Tejan, who's been an integral part of this aspect of Jim's work.
Thank you, Keisha. I can't replicate what Marvin just did, so I'm not even going to try. I do have 3 points, though. I've worked with Jim for the last 13 years, and we talked about sustainability and move, and as I was thinking of these words, I thought about Jim, and I said, you know, Jim, you're one of the most authentic leaders I think I've worked with. You're a compassionate leader, you're a creative leader, and you're a courageous leader. Those are the 3. I got them. you've got a big heart. That compassion's there. You can see it. And staff and faculty, students, friends feel that as well in your leadership. The creativity, the intelligence. You're always 10 steps ahead of everybody, and everybody has to kind of catch up to where you are in this. And then the courageous, prone action. Wow. We have a facility that's been there forever, 40,000 square feet. How do you lead an organization through considering the sale, actually making the sale, actually having a move? I think that has to be a compassionate, courageous leader. This space is awesome, and Jim, you brought us to this space. And what's really exciting, and this takes me back to that center creativity, is the willingness to think differently about how technology can be used, how the digital age can be used, and Project Starling. So Jim, thank you for your high integrity, your transparency. And I use the word transparency because I remember a bunch of conversations with Jim. I'm bound, I can't, everybody wants me to tell them stuff, but I can't. I've signed an agreement, I can't tell them what's going on, but everybody wants to know what's going on, and you have to lead through that. That's tough, that's courageous. So Jim, I appreciate your high integrity, your transparency, and your authentic leadership. Thank you.
So we've just identified 4 ways that Jim has influenced LSTC. Let's review them. We're an agile seminary, a public seminary, a moral seminary, and an adaptive seminary. But these are by no means the whole story of Jim's tenure and his presidency here at LSTC. But the significance of these 4 offer a framework to tell a coherent story of the seminary and how Jim helped us build together, and the kind of institutional shifts that will last longer even after his retirement. So these are the 4 pillars that are supporting what we've built in the next decade here in Hyde Park and beyond.
Before asking Jim to offer some words, we have one more speaker. A surprise on the agenda, a significant church leader in her own right, and one who has had an inside perspective on all Jim has done, and I'm sure things he considered doing, but after talking it over with the ref, decided not to. Here to offer a personal view of Jim's commitment to his role as president, Jim's wife, Joanne Post.
– 43 years, 2 months, and 11 days. I had just committed a month-long crash course in Biblical Greek at Wartburg Seminary in Dubuque, Iowa, our alma mater. Commiserating with classmates in the refectory after the exam, I looked up to see a tall, handsome man lope into the room. My heart stopped. My palms sweated, and I knew. Jim was not as quickly smitten as I. I had to get rid of the girlfriend first. But once she was out of the picture, he fell as hard for me as I had for him. Jim and I had been together only a couple of months when, in a romantic moment, he took my hands, looked deeply into my eyes, and said those 3 little words every girl wants to hear: "You're so smart." And then, "You're so strong." It may not seem romantic to you, but it meant the world to me. I was a 22-year-old Iowa farm kid who'd been disowned by my family for wanting to be a pastor because women weren't great as pastors in those days. I didn't have 2 pennies to rub together. I was alone, afraid, and uncertain, but Jim saw me. Jim saw gifts in me that I didn't know I had. I was smart, I was strong, and I still am. One of Jim's many gifts is his ability to see into a future and imagine how it might be shaped, to see into a problem and imagine the steps toward solving it, to see into people, to see into each of you, and imagine how you might be more, better, wiser, smarter, stronger than you know yourself to be. All of this he does for the sake of our common work of expanding the reach of the gospel in the world. In these many extraordinarily difficult, exciting, challenging, sleepless years, Jim has not slept in 13 years. Neither have I. Jim's ability to see clearly, to see us, to help us negotiate pitfalls, surprises, disappointments, and obstacles that could have been catastrophic. But Jim has, with you, his dear, trusted partners, seen a way forward that will shape not only LSTC, but theological education across the church. Meeting Jim is a bracing experience, as you know, and he is, for many, an acquired taste. But whether you recognize his amazingness on a first meeting or come to appreciate it over time, you always know that you have been seen and that you are more because Jim Nieman has seen you. Jim and I will continue together 43 years, 2 months, and 11 days counting, smarter and stronger when we are together, celebrating our remarkable daughters, Clara and Madeline, and our wonderful grandson, Theodore James. It will be sad for me and for Jim when this chapter of our lives at LSTC comes to a close in a few months. And so we're not done yet. There's still more to be seen. But I want to thank you for trusting his insight, for trusting his leadership, for trusting his vision. Know that Jim sees in you what he first saw in me. You are smart, you are strong, and you are seen.
So 2 comments before the comments. The first is, it would be very, I had originally thought, oh yeah, I'll just go up there without any notes and I'll just, speak. That's a disastrous idea. That leads to 28-minute speeches and no good. The other thing is, it's very easy to do is to sort of, for me to fall into being self-deprecating and thereby, in some respect, diminish the very kind and generous comments you've all made. I don't want to do that at all. I heard you, and I'm really deeply appreciative of your kindness, and it reflects back to you, I want to say. When I was called as president years ago, I experienced a sudden change. All at once, whatever I said was suddenly funny or deeply wise, like I had never known before. Ordinary remarks were now clever and witty, eliciting hilarity all around. Everyday observations were now sage and probing, great insights discovered anew. What had happened? Well, those halcyon days of yore have year by year slowly dimmed until we come to today, 83 days before retirement, when I have reached the equally surprising realization that I'm not funny or wise at all. Why, quips are still patiently regarded as askew, as in, that's a pretty funny thing for him to say. And my remarks still lead to reflection, but more of this kind. What do you suppose he meant by that? For whatever reason, though, my skill for humor and wisdom is seriously diminished. I liked it better the other way, though. Before I lose all ability to make any sense at all, at this moment in this lovely event, let me just say two things, hoping you can still hear me at all. The first is, clearly, thank you. Well, maybe that's not so clear these days, since remembering to be thankful seems so quickly to evaporate in the overheated busyness and selfishness of daily life. When we strive to assert our own will and position while completely forgetting about those who actually get the job done in the first place. So let me offer my sincere and deep thanks to so many of you who have joined us today. Thank you to those who have planned this event, participated in it through your remarks or your presence, especially to Keisha and to Chris, both dear friends who arrived at just the right moment in my life, and whose generosity towards me has been beyond thanking. More broadly than that, thanks also to you who have labored in the common joy of this complicated, passionate little school of ours. I hope you heard everything I said in that. I include in that host those we employ as faculty and staff, those we engage as students and learners, those who guide us in the surely thankless job of serving on our governance board. And I want to add special acknowledgement to two of my colleagues who made possible this move to this place, Barbara Reed, the president of CTU, and David, for being with us from McCormick. And speaking of the governance board, a special thanks is due to the board chairs with whom I've closely worked over the years, who learned so very much more about the dark underbelly of this school than they ever wanted to know, and still stayed with me through the harrowing conversations. Get this list. To Sarah, Melody, Twyla, Scott, Mary Jean, Christy, Terry, and Greg, I am so grateful for your partnership. And now you need to go find a good trauma therapist. And of course, I am so thankful for our tiny yet truly quirky family, our brilliant, kind, and sassy daughters, Clara and Madeline, our kinetic grandson, Theodore, and my beloved wife. It's not how long we've known each other, but my beloved wife in marriage of 41 years, Joanne. In our vows, so long ago, we pledged to share all that is to come, all that is to come. And though I fear these 13 years have severely tested that, I so look forward to sharing more to come, unencumbered by a 68-mile round-trip commute. So that's the first thing, or the first of many things that I hope you can hear from me. Thank you. The other takes the form of a tale that I would like to tell, a tale for tomorrow and tomorrow and tomorrow. My favorite European fabulist, that's a narrow category, wouldn't you say? My favorite European fabulist is Italo Calvino, a towering figure of literature and journalism. His elaborate novels and complexly intertwined short stories are worth your exploring. But my very favorite of them all is a very brief parable. Calvino was only a tender 20 years old when he wrote it. But he was 20 years old in 1943 amidst the suffocating fascist dictatorship of Benito Mussolini. So then, this parable is about a world a long time ago, 80 years, and a world as recent as this week. I'm going to read it aloud, the whole thing. It's only 500 words. And heads up, it's an audience participation story where you play a really pivotal and repeated role. Don't worry, I'll signal you about what to do and when. You will get the idea. I stepped off the pavement, walked backwards a few paces, looking up, and from the middle of the street brought my hands to my mouth to make a megaphone and shouted to the top stories of the block, "Teresa!" My shadow took fright at the moon and huddled at my feet. Someone walked by. Again I shouted, "Teresa!" The man came up to me and said, "If you don't shout louder, she's not going to hear you. So let's both try. We count to 3, and on 3 we shout together." And he said, 1, 2, 3, Teresa! A small group of friends passing by on their way back from the theater and the cafe saw us calling out. They said, "Come on, we'll give you a shout too." And they joined us in the middle of the street, and the first man said 1, 2, 3, and then everybody together shouted, "Teresa!" Somebody else came and joined us. A quarter of an hour later, there was a whole bunch of us, 20 almost, and every now and again, somebody new came along. Organizing ourselves to give a good shout, all at the same time, was not easy. There was always someone who began before 3 or went on too long. But in the end, we were managing something fairly efficient. We agreed that the T should be shouted low and long, the re high and long, and the sa low and short. It sounded just fine. Just a squabble every now and again when someone was off. We were beginning to get it just right when somebody who, if his voice was anything to go by, must have had a very freckly face, said, "But are you sure she's home?" "No," I said. "Ah, that is bad," another said. "Forgotten your key, have you?" "Actually," I said, "I have my key." So they asked, "Well, why don't you go up?" "Well, I don't live here," I answered. "I live on the other side of town." Well, then, excuse my curiosity," the one with the freckled voice said, "but who lives here?" "I wouldn't really know," I said. People were getting a bit upset about this. "So could you please explain?" Somebody with a very toothy voice asked, "Why are you down here calling Teresa?" "As far as I'm concerned," I said, "we can call out another name if you like, or try someplace else in town." The others were getting a bit annoyed. "I hope you weren't playing a trick on us," the freckled one asked suspiciously. "What?" I said resentfully, and turned to the others for confirmation of my good faith, who said nothing. There was silence, a moment of embarrassment. "Look," said someone good-naturedly, "why don't we all call out Teresa one more time, and then we can go home?" So we did it one more time. 1, 2, 3, Teresa! But it didn't come out very well. Then people headed off for home, some one way, some another. I had already turned onto the square when I thought I heard a voice, a quiet voice, a voice still calling, "Teresa." Someone must have stayed on to shout. Someone stubborn. This is my prayer for you, dear LSTC friends, stay on to shout. Be stubborn. Thank you.
As President James Nieman prepares to conclude his distinguished tenure at the Lutheran School of Theology at Chicago, we are pleased to announce a special campaign to honor his remarkable contributions and lasting legacy. Starting today through February 1st, 2025, we invite the LSTC community to join us in celebrating President Nieman by supporting a project that is close to his heart: the revitalization of LSTC's Rare Book Room. Founded over 50 years ago, the Rare Book Room's collection houses an extraordinary selection of theological, biblical, and historical texts. Despite its significance, this collection has not received the level of resourcing it deserves in recent years. But with your support, we can organize and catalog these treasures to enhance its accessibility and adapt them for modern educational purposes. The goal is to raise $250,000 to support this initiative. So following this event, you'll receive an email that will tell you how you can honor President Nieman's legacy by making a gift to this campaign. And speaking of gifts, President Nieman, can you come up, please? Greg Kaufman, are you here? Can you come up, please? And is Jenny here? Okay, all right. I asked Greg to come up and also Jenny because they are the co-chairs of the board transition committee, and they have supported this effort. I think you could actually stand over this way.
Where should I stand?
Right next to, on the other side of, yep. Sam will be the giver of gifts. She was also the creator of one of these gifts. The LSTC community wants to express gratitude for your leadership in a very small way. We are gifting you with two things. The first, this is a photo that was illustrated by Lucinda Rogers. It is the forthcoming image that will be on the Epistle magazine. It is an illustration of Jim standing outside of the seminary with a murmuration of starlings hovering over the top. And the second gift is a collection of photos that have been gathered from over the years that illustrate your role as leadership throughout, as a leader throughout your tenure as president.
Thank you.
And if you've not had enough fun, please know that there is more to come. The party transitions into a reception that is right outside of these doors in the grand hallway. In the grand hallway. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much.
We'll conclude our time here praying together a prayer that's been very special to Jim, such that he did a beautiful calligraphied version of it, which was displayed behind his desk, sometimes called the Prayer for Good Courage. It's in this hymnal on the bottom of page 304, not hymn 304, but the page numbers on the bottom towards the beginning of the book, 304. It begins, "O God, you have called your servants." I'll start and invite you to pray along with me. The Lord be with you.
And also with you.
O God, you have called your servants to ventures of which we cannot see the ending, by paths as yet untrodden, through perils unknown. Give us faith to go out with good courage, not knowing where we go, but only that your hand is leading us and your love supporting us. Through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen. I invite you, as you're able to, please rise as we conclude with hymn 816, also in this same book. Go in peace and enjoy the reception together.